All right, welcome back. The last class we had, we said in our next class we're going to be looking at atomic structure and chemical combination. But before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Christopher Akpagome. You are welcome to the Chem Lab Chemistry lecture. Now, today we are going to be looking at atomic structure. Now, while we are at it, if you have not subscribed to our channel, please look for the subscribe button at the bottom and click on subscribe so that you'll be subscribed to our channel, and when we upload any video or subsequent videos, you can always get notified of the videos we have uploaded and get to learn more about chemistry. Once again, you are welcome to the Chem Lab Chemistry lecture. Let's get to the business of today. Now, we're looking at atomic structure. Atomic structure, that's what we're looking at today. Now, first of all, we're going to talk about what an atom is. Now, we have already spoke about that in our previous class. Now, we said atom is the smallest particle what? Of an element, which can take part in a chemical reaction. That's what we said. Is it not so? Good. But this atom we are talking about is actually made up of what? Particles as well. Yes, this atom is made up of what? Particles as well. Now, despite the fact that it's the smallest particle, yes, but that does not mean that there are not particles that make it up. Okay, so these particles that make it up are called subatomic what? Particles. So atom is made up of what? Subatomic what? Particles. Exactly. So atom, yes, is the smallest particle of an element that can take part in a chemical reaction. But this same atom is made up of what? Subparticles. Subparticles. It is these subparticles that actually form the structure of an atom, which we call atomic structure. Okay, so it is these subatomic particles or subparticles of the atom that form what we call the atomic structure. Now, let's look at these subatomic particles or these subparticles of an atom. Now, what are the subparticles of an atom? Now, the subparticles of an atom are, we have the neutron, the proton, and the electron. These are the subparticles of an atom. These are the subparticles of an atom. Now, before we go into these subparticles of an atom, let's look at the meaning of atomic structure. We have already looked at the meaning of atom in our last or our previous classes. So now, let's see. Atomic structure is the arrangement of the subparticles of an atom. That's atomic structure. The arrangement of the subparticles of what? An atom. So the way and manner in which what these subparticles what are arranged is what constitutes the what atomic what structure. Okay. Now, atomic structure, you have a structure which is a what? A building. Is it not so? Now, that structure or that building is made up of what? Different parts. Now, without those different parts, we will not have a structure that we can call a building structure. Are we following now? So it is because of those different parts that were brought together that form the what? The structure. So you hear school structure. When you hear school structure, it means that different parts, listen, it means that different parts that pertains to academics, that pertains to what? Learning, were brought together to form a whole. And so, because it is different part that pertains to what? Academics, that were brought together to form that whole is now called a school structure. So when we have atomic structure, different parts that makes up the atom being brought together to form a whole is now called, that whole is now called what? Atomic structure. Are we following now? So we can also say atomic structure is a whole that is formed by bringing together different parts or the different subparticles of an atom. Okay, so that's atomic structure. Now let's look at these different parts now. Now we have, let's take a look at electron first. Now the electron, what's the electron? The electron are actually what? Negatively charged subparticles of the atom that are moving in a spherical orbit about a fixed what? Region. What did we say it is? We said the electron are what? Negatively charged subparticles of the atom, which are what? Moving in a spherical pattern around a what? A region. So the electron what? These are negatively charged particles, subparticles rather, of the atom, which are moving in a spherical pattern around a region, called shell. Now, we said there are negatively charged particles which are moving around the region called what? Shell. Is it not so? Now, these electrons do not behave the same way. Okay? Now, because they do not behave the same way, they occupy different share in the structure of the atom. Now, this their difference in behavior and this their occupying of different shares in the atomic structure is as a result of the kind of energy or the level of energy that the electron possess. There are electrons that have lower energy. There are electrons that have what? Higher energy. Now, those ones that have lower energy will occupy the lower energy level, while those that have higher energy will occupy the higher energy level. So that's why they do not occupy the same region, because of their difference in what? Energy. Now, each of those regions, which is otherwise known as share, can also be called what? Energy level. Exactly. All right. So now, having said that, we are going to draw the atomic structure. Just follow us. Now, having said that, we have looked at electron. Let's look at what? The proton. The proton. Now, what is the proton? The proton are actually direct opposites of the what? Electron. Now, the proton are positively charged subparticles of the atom located at the central part of the what? Atom. They are positively charged subparticles of the atom located at the central part of the atom. But one thing about the proton is that they are heavier than what? The electron. They are heavier than the what? Electron. And so you notice that the electron is moving in a spherical what? Pattern around the what? Center of the what? Atom. While the proton is resting at the center of the what? Atom. Okay? So if you have two objects and then you hold, okay, let's say you have water that is stagnant somewhere and you put cellophane on that water. What happens to the cellophane? The cellophane will be suspended on the surface of the water because the cellophane is less dense than the water. The cellophane is lighter than the water. Are we following now? So that's why you see that the electron is what moving in a spherical form around the center of the nucleus of the atom, while the proton is resting there, just as the water rests while the cellophane is floating on top. So we say that the proton, a positively charged subparticle, okay, of the atom located at the central part of the atom. Okay, they are the central part of the atom. And then we said that the proton is heavier than the what do we call it? Than the electron. Okay. Now, by how many times is it heavier than the electron? It is heavier than the electron by 1,840 times. Okay. So the proton is 1,840 times heavier than the electron. Now, we mentioned central part of the atom. Now, the central part of the atom is called the nucleus. That's the central part of the atom. This is the central parts of the atom. So you can find the proton in the nucleus. And then let's write this. It contains, that's the nucleus now, contains the proton and the neutron. So the proton and the neutron are in the nucleus. All right, thank you very much. We don't want the video to be too long. In our next class, we'll look at the next set of subparticles of an atom. And then we'll now move over to the model of the atom. That is the different explanations that were given by different scientists as to the atomic structure and the behavior of the particles that make up the atomic structures. Thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Do have a nice day.